Hey everybody, it's the kind of weekly update in Congress. Of course, unfortunately, I think it's about the 35th day the shutdown continues. It's also the crisis on the border continues. You probably know that there's another caravan heading up from Central America through Mexico. Mexico at this point is facilitating their travel through Mexico to our border with their attempt to cross illegally or through maybe some of them potentially legally through the ports of entry. And you know, we're not in D.C. If you haven't figured that out. Session, we decided to go back into session because we are in a shutdown. This week was supposed to be a week to be in the district in conjunction with the Martin Luther King holiday, and we would meet with constituents that don't want to drive to Washington, D.C. to hear their concerns and so on and so forth. And so that was all scrapped, and we were in D.C. to try and figure out this impasse. But the majority party, Nancy Pelosi, ended session early, so we ended last night, and so we're at home on Friday and throughout the weekend, which is great, but it's not great because it's also a day when people aren't being paid for their second paycheck, and they've been working for these weeks without a paycheck. So to my mind, we should be in Washington, D.C. trying to work through the impasse. Just to let you know what we did get accomplished, there was a bill passed, of course, to open the federal government, but it had no border security in it. And what's fascinating about this is, and maybe you don't know this, what we're talking about, what the impasse is about, is what's called the Homeland Security Appropriations Bill. So when you appropriate, that's where we take your tax dollars and we decide how much to spend on what. So that's the appropriations bill. So we're going to open up the government, because there's some other related issues, obviously, that are caught up in this thing, but we're not going to address border security in the Homeland Security Appropriations Bill. That's why we're at this impasse, because the president wants to address border security and the other side doesn't want to give him what he's asking for in the negotiation. And what does that negotiation include? From the president's side, I think he's offered 4 or 5 times different offers of things that I think the other side, the Democrats, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, want, like they want to deal with the deferred action for childhood arrival. Young people that were brought here generally by their parents and don't know any other country, just grew up in America and now they're here, but they're here illegally. So the president offered that. Also, what's known as TPS, temporary protective status. That's if another country has a hurricane or something like that and they ask the United States, can we relocate some of our people to your country temporarily while we fix our situation? And what happens is many times these people stay for 10, 20 years under temporary protective status. And the president offered that as well to see if the Democrats would be interested in dealing with those issues. What he's asking for in the $5.7 billion, and I got my notes here, is obviously some additional, I think, 234 miles, according to the Border Patrol and Homeland Security, the 234 miles in the 10 worst points between entry points. So the entry points where people come legally to enter into the United States, but there are 234 miles in between those entry points where Border Security or Border Patrol and Homeland Security said these are places where people are crossing illegally, and these are the 10 worst places. So it includes that. It also includes 805 miles for technology, canines and personnel to help stop the flow of illegal drugs, weapons, and other contraband. $675 million for drug detection inspection technology to help secure our ports of entry. So those are the places where people are coming in legally. $130 million for canine units, training, personnel, and portable scanners to help deter and detect smuggled narcotics, weapons, human trafficking, and other dangerous materials. $800 million in humanitarian assistance for medical support and new temporary housing. So when people come and they're sick, we have to take care of them. So that's $800 million for that. And also, we don't have any place to house them. There's not enough room because so many have come that literally the Border Patrol has to take them when they catch them and then release them into the country because we don't have anywhere to put them. Also, $563 million to support our immigration court system, including hiring 75 new immigration judge teams so that people, when they claim asylum, there has to be a judge to adjudicate whether that claim is valid. And right now we're about a 800,000 case backlog. And finally, $782 million to hire additional Border Patrol agents, 2,750 Border Patrol agents. So that's kind of where we are. We did have a motion, which is it's an amendment to the bill where we wanted to pay everybody that hasn't been paid. There were two amendments this week to pay people that haven't been paid. We came close, 200 to 215 on the vote in the House of Representatives. We got a handful of Democrats, I think maybe 10 Democrats to vote for that. But this is Republicans voting to pay for these people that haven't been paid, and Democrats, it's kind of an all or nothing proposition for them, so they won't vote for that. And again, about 800,000 federal employees are missing their second paycheck today, and that's a problem. And of course, like I said, it's really frustrating because I think both sides agree that border security is an issue, and so we both acknowledge it's an issue, but the president wants to put some barrier up as prescribed by Homeland Security, and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer don't want to do that, so they're saying we're not going to do any of that. And the president says we have to have that in this appropriation bill. So something else that happened, there was a bill regarding NATO, and there's been a little bit of communication, people writing in, why did I vote the way I voted on that? And what Congress was interested in doing, what Ms. Pelosi was offering was taking the constitutional right away from the president to negotiate a treaty. And the NATO stands for North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And so that's essentially foreign affairs. And we hire one person, the president, that conducts foreign affairs on our behalf. Certainly Congress approves it, but you can't have 535 different members negotiating treaties. That's why we give it to the president. So this bill sought to limit the president. As a matter of fact, the way this bill was written, we would never be able to leave NATO under any circumstances. And understand what the situation is there. What NATO says is if any one of those nations, including ours, is attacked, the other nations will come to their aid militarily. So it commits us to military force. And what this said is we could never leave. The president would never be able to not do that. And understand we're making commitments that, today you might have an ally that tomorrow might not be as much of an ally. And I will characterize Turkey on the edge of that. They're a NATO ally, but they do things that we don't necessarily like. If somebody attacks Turkey, we are duty-bound to send troops. This bill would disallow that. And then finally, it's just unconstitutional. The president has the powers. There are Article 1 powers. It's Article 1 of the Constitution that says that this is the purview of the executive branch. And Congress was seeking to take that away from him. And regardless of who the president is, whether I agree or disagree, we have to uphold and defend the Constitution. You can't take his power away. So that's why I voted that way. I'm a supporter of NATO, but I'll also say this as well. NATO's mission originally was to be a bulwark against the Soviet Union. And so in many ways, NATO has succeeded, but it succeeded in 1991. So we've got to I think it's appropriate to ask, what's NATO's current mission? What is their mission? And your tax dollars are paying for this. And the only way the president was able to get other countries to commit more, to pay more of their commitment, was to say, we'll think about leaving if you're not going to do your fair share. Under this bill, the president would never have that bargaining leverage. So that's why I voted the way that I did. Also, committee assignments came out this week. I'm on transportation and infrastructure, which is really important to Pennsylvania, and on foreign affairs. Those are two committees that I've served on in the past. I am not going to be on Homeland Security. We have less committee positions in the minority now, so they had to take one away, and that's how it goes. But I'm privileged to be on those committees, and so hopefully we can get to the negotiating table, and hopefully, if we're not going to continue to negotiate on one of these amendments where we offer to pay for employees that have been working for these weeks, that we can get the other side to help us out and vote for that so these people can be paid. Dauphin County, if you live in Dauphin County, with redistricting, we moved offices and set up a new office. The office is 800 Corporate Circle, which is off the Progress Avenue exit. And so if you're looking for us, just check the phone numbers on the webpage or stop in or make an appointment, but 800 Corporate Circle. Anyhow, that's the update for today. We'll see what happens as we progress. Hopefully we can end this shutdown very soon and deal with the border security issue as appropriate. Thank you.